We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's August 18th here in Seoul. I'm smugglerse, and this is News Generation, where we make the news at Arirang's very own open studio. Every morning, we'll discuss the top issues and latest current affairs affecting people in their 20s and 30s. Joining me in the studio is Cheska Dainha.
Happy Friday, everyone.
Happy Friday.
I love Friday.
I love Friday, too. And Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Now, the Education Ministry on Thursday has decided to implement a new class policy protecting teachers set to take effect from this September. Though corporate punishment is still banned, teachers will be able to use physical force to stop students from using violence against them. Parents will also have to make appointments in advance in order to meet teachers in person. The new rules will also allow teachers to refuse meeting with parents outside of work hours. The latest measures come after teachers nationwide called for more protection against abusive parents and students. Moving on, back in June, a picture of this skinny lion cramped inside a pen went viral. This 20-year-old lion was trapped inside a private zoo in the southeastern city of Kimhae and was clearly malnourished. Visitors also testified that other animals were poorly cared for. Since then, many across the nation demanded that the city's officials shut down this zoo, and this actually happened. Last Saturday, the zoo officially closed after 10 years of operation and has since been moving roughly 100 animals from 30 species to other facilities. And for the first time ever, a Korean children's show will include an autistic character. Starting this Friday, Korea's educational broadcasting system will introduce Pyeori, who has autistic spectrum disorder, on its popular puppet show dubbed Ding Dong Dang Kindergarten. EBS said they've decided to introduce Pyeori to its viewers to help children learn more about this disorder and learn how to embrace boundaries and diversity. And it's quite groundbreaking to see a popular local show feature a character with ASD. That's because it's very rare. In Korea, a lot of people look down on autistic people and have a lack of information and awareness on how to deal with this disorder. We did see some change last year with the drama Extraordinary Attorney Woo, shedding light on what it's like to have this disorder. The main protagonist was a lawyer with ASD, and the drama series was hailed for its realistic portrayal of autistic people, rather than showing stereotypes such as being overly dependent on others and not being able to do anything by themselves. So the new autistic character in EBS's children's show also illustrates how the Korean public is becoming more open to ASD. And I'd like to expand the newsfeed here to the studio. Walter, what did you think about this news story?
I think it's obviously a great step in the right direction for raising awareness about disabilities, including autism. And I've seen other shows as well do this, where they include people in wheelchairs as well as other disabilities that one might have. It really needs to be taught to children from a very young age that, though we are, a human race, that we do differ in some ways, and sometimes some people are less fortunate, but that doesn't mean that we should be looking down on them, that we should be including them in our discussions, in our play. And I really think that EBS has done a great job by including this character. Now, like you mentioned just before, Extraordinary Attorney Woo was extremely popular, and that got a lot of praise among many people for raising awareness about autism. And like we say in Korea, we sadly there is still some people that look down on people with disabilities. So it is good to see that we are changing. I do think maybe they would have gotten this idea from Extraordinary Attorney Woo, because they also have in the TV drama series, they actually mentioned Pengsu as well, to a person who is also disabled. So I think maybe that would have been a great way to introduce a character into the EBS universe.
Right, and for our viewers who don't know who Pengsu is, it's the penguin character from EBS. That is really, I love Pengsu. He always breaks down the hierarchical system at work, and it's a penguin character that a lot of people in Korea love. And as we mentioned, I think Pyeori is opening the gateways for Korea to be more accepting towards different types of disabilities and learning how to break down any prejudice related to it. Cheska, have we seen similar cases like EBS's character Pyeori abroad, though?
I think the exposure in these kind of issues is particularly important because, as Walter mentioned, I think we have, this separation or sort of misunderstanding when we don't get to interact with it or have less awareness of these circumstances. So I definitely am excited to see EBS adopt this. The one thing that I would be a little bit cautious is I hope they treat it, with a sensitive and, kind of care on representing the kids with ASD. Now, as you mentioned, Ian, I think there has been abundant representation in the Western or international media. There is The Rain Man, one of my favorite movies. Yeah. The Atypical and The A Word. And also, Walter and I were talking about this just before coming on air. Love on Spectrum, which is a docu-series about young adults with autism trying to find love.
Ah, that's really nice.
It's actually one of the most heartwarming and also heart-wrenching sort of emotional journey of what it's like to navigate this modern world with autism. And I think these kind of representation and exposure in media is absolutely essential.
And it's really essential, and it's groundbreaking to see that it's happening in a children's show here in Korea, because I think that's the prime age you can learn about learning different diversity and learning to embrace boundaries. Now, that was our news feed for this Friday. Let's head into our discussion topic of the day. Have you guys seen the movie Barbie? Well, since its release in mid-July, it has broken box office records around the world, but not so much in Korea. Why? Let's find out. You guys know Barbie, right? It's the iconic fashion doll created by American businesswoman Ruth Handler back in the 50s. The first generation of Barbies had blonde hair, a perfect body, and blue eyes. Over the years, the doll's manufacturer, Mattel, has been trying to read societal changes. It's been producing more diverse Barbies, whether that be in skin color, body shape, or occupation. Jumping onto this trend of promoting diversity, the comedy live-action movie Barbie was released this summer. MargotRobbie plays the stereotypical Barbie who goes through an existential crisis. She then travels to the human world and discovers her true purpose. The moral of the movie is that Barbie dolls portray unrealistic physical and female roles in society. In turn, it tries to promote feminism and female empowerment. The American and Canadian audiences have accepted the movie very well. It's made over $526 million in these markets as of August 14th. Korea, on the other hand, not so much. 3 weeks since its release, it has only amassed $3.89 million. Foreign media and movie critics believe this is because the Korean society doesn't mesh well with the concept of feminism. Is this true? Korea was one of the first countries Team Barbie decided to visit to promote their movie. Back in July, the main actress MargotRobbie came to Korea and wore hanbok as part of her promo tour. But weeks since the movie's release, ticket sales flopped. Some commentators, like a piece in The Guardian, claimed the movie didn't reach the Korean audience because of how feminism is perceived. And take a look at the screen to find out what exactly this article had to say. So this is what it said. South Korean's women rights activist Hae Shim said the film's themes might have turned off cinemagoers because, she said, I think Barbie undoubtedly highlights the fact that a woman-centered film with feminist humor is still regarded as a taboo subject. Then the article went on to say, in recent years, feminism in South Korea has morphed into a negative concept associated with radical behavior, a perception that has gained traction in popular male-dominated online communities and now in wider society. So basically, Western commentators are saying that the movie promoted feminism too strongly, which in a male-dominated and hierarchical society like Korea cannot easily accept. And do you guys agree with this claim?
I do. I don't think that would have been the main reason why Korea may have not gone to see this movie, but I think there is obviously a very small population that would have used that excuse as a reason not to go see it for the over-the-top feminism message. South Korea is seen slow when it comes to feminism by foreigners and also some people living in Korea, right? So I'm sure that would have been a topic of discussion. Some online communities also said that it was kind of anti-men, and there was a lot of mentions of the patriarchy as well. Personally, as a male, I wouldn't feel upset about that sort of thing. I'm not that sensitive to these sort of issues, to be honest with you. But another reason that people might have been put off is when the political message or the societal message overpowers the movie itself, and some people are turned off. They just want to go and see a fun movie about a doll, basically. They didn't really want to get too involved in the politics about it, and therefore, if they would have heard that, that might have strayed their opinion on going to whether to see it or not. Like, I have Korean friends who are a certain way as well, where they don't like overly feminism talks, or they get very annoyed. But yeah, I don't think it's the main reason.
And Cheska, you can see the movie playing on right now. Did you watch it, and do you think that's the main reason why people in Korea didn't go see it, because of feminism?
I mean, you can tell by the way that I'm dressed today that I'm definitely representing one of the viewers of the Barbie movie itself. You know, everyone is entitled to their opinion, given that, you know, it's an art piece, so everybody interprets it differently. Now, I have a slightly different opinion on the reasons that Barbie didn't do as well as they had expected. I mean, I think the first and foremost reason is the cultural and emotional connection South Koreans may have with Barbie. Now, even though I watched it, I was not interested in watching a doll franchise movie that, one, I didn't grow up with, two, I have absolutely no emotional connection to, and three, it freaked me out a little bit when I was growing up.
Really?
Yeah, it was too delicate and too real. So, I mean, for people like even myself who grew up in the Western country that doesn't have this much connection, I can only imagine that not many South Koreans have the kind of emotional connection with Barbie as well. So there's the first hurdle.
Right.
And second, also the demographics. A lot of the people who are going to watch Barbie globally range from, you know, little kids to well into their 50s, because Barbie doll came out, you know, a long time ago. But I think in Korea, the only demographic that is interested or know about Barbie doll is probably females in their 20s, maybe 30s. So already the population that is interested in watching the movie in the first place is slightly lower. And I think, again, as a viewer that watched it, I don't think it was a feminist movie per se, but it was a very humanistic movie. And Walter didn't dress up to represent Ken, but when I watched the movie, I actually had a very endearing heart to understand, you know, male, like Ken's side of the story as well. So it was a very well-balanced human movie, in my opinion, personally.
Right, but speaking of feminism in Korea, I must admit that it hasn't been receiving the best or positive reaction from Korean society. Back in 2019, we saw the movie Kim Ji-young, born in 1982, come out. At the time, if celebrities posted videos or photos of them actually watching the movie or reading the book, they received a lot of backlash because people didn't understand the concept of feminism and would only look at it radically and say they are not contributing to society in a good way. But I think the movie Barbie is a bit different, though I must admit that we are seeing patriarchy and feminism not as well accepted compared to other parts of the world. It's not the main reason why people didn't go see to watch it. And if you take a look at the screen, there's another movie I'd like to introduce. It's called Smugglers. It recently came out around the same time that Barbie hit box office, and it's about a lot of women. It's a predominantly female cast where these free diving women are all fired from their jobs, and then they instead do smuggling. They go underwater, smuggle goods, and it's really about women empowerment. It's about a female cast, and a lot of critics are saying if Barbie didn't succeed in Korea because of feminism, this movie shouldn't have succeeded as well here in Korea, because this movie also promotes about the empowerment of women and the cooperation they have, and it's a female cast. So there's a lot of debate as to why Barbie didn't succeed, but I think a better way we can find out is by including a film critic who can analyze reasons 1 to 3 as to why it didn't make it here in Korea. And before we do that, we're also going to hear what our global viewers had to say about this issue. And we asked if they saw this movie and what they thought about it, and here's what 3 of them had to say. Giselle said, I watched the movie twice, once with a group of female friends, and we all wore our pink outfits. The second time was with my fiance. It has a talented cast. The underlying themes are serious, but they put a lot of humor into it. Jamu Jizan said, I haven't watched it and don't plan to watch it. From the trailer and reviews, I don't think it has anything inspiring to tell. MIMS says, I live in the United States and watched it with other women in my family. I enjoyed it, but I would not watch it again. I did not laugh out loud every often in the film, but my cousin liked it so much, she saw it twice. And I think our viewers really grasp today's message. Movies isn't about whether everyone has has different tastes. You know, some people might find a movie to be very entertaining and click with them,
Right.
but others might not. And we're going to include a film critic, whether he agrees with the statement that the Korean public isn't ready or welcoming to see feminism elements in movies, or what the other reasons are for the movie Barbie to have not hit it off compared to other parts of the world. We'll include him in our talks right after this. Let's hear from a film critic and professor from Kyungdong University. It's Jason Bechervaise. Welcome, Jason.
Hello.
All
Thanks for having me.
right, great to have you here.
Hello.
I'd like to ask you the first question. Compared to other parts of the world, we've been mentioning that the movie Barbie didn't hit it off too well with the Korean audience. And as I mentioned before, an article in The Guardian claimed that's because the movie promoted feminism, which the Korean public isn't ready to accept. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think I think there are many factors behind the box office failure of Barbie. Feminism has been a factor behind some of the success, or feminist bashing online, and we've seen that with films like How to Use Guys with Secret Tips. Back in 2013, it was subject to kind of so-called netizen terror, which is basically tried to sabotage a film's success at the box office, and they were successful. It bombed, although the film became a cult classic in many ways. And you mentioned earlier the film Kim Ji-yeon, 1982, and that too was subject to a lot of anti-feminist kind of rhetoric online, although the film actually did pretty well. I mean, it sold well over 3 million admissions. And I think the success of that film does go to show that there is an audience out there that's eager to watch these films. And Barbie, yes, it didn't do very well. But I think certainly, yes, perhaps it was also subjected to online kind of hate from anti-feminists. But at the same time, I think you also mentioned there earlier how Barbie, is a very American cultural icon. And if you look at the Korean box office, some films do really well here and other films don't. I mean, Korea is somewhat a unique market in that sense. Films like Star Wars, for example, have never performed well in Korea. Despite all the hype. They do very well, of course, in the United States, North America, and Western markets. Never done well in Korea. And so, if I'm honest, when I saw Barbie, I was like, well, I don't think that's going to do very well, partly because it's just very American. And it also, there was also this kind of ingenious marketing as well, that was instigated. It seemed to kind of originate somewhat organically, Barbenheimer, which just drove audiences into the theaters, one of the biggest weekends ever, to go and watch Barbie and Oppenheimer. That wasn't really the case here. Oppenheimer opened just just a couple of days ago, opened much later than other markets. And so it didn't have the publicity push. MargotRobbie came, but along with the director Greta Gerwig, but it didn't really have that kind of momentum behind it that I think other markets had. And I mean, you can compare it to a film like Elemental, a very different movie, but that film has sold over, it's closing in on 7 million admissions now.
Right.
And it's, in terms of its, box office revenue, it's generated more than double than any other market outside North America. It was seen as kind of flopping, but it's done really well in Korea, partly because of the kind of the the cultural connections in the story, but I think it just also has, I mean, it's very melodramatic, and it's also got a great soundtrack. And, if you look at Korea, some films that have these great OSTs have done really well. Frozen, for example, Begin Again, About Time, outperforming other markets. So, I think with Barbie, we're seeing the other side of that, and some films just don't do very well
Jason,
here.
Exactly, as you mentioned, I think there's so many factors as to why the movie Barbie didn't hit it off with the Korean public. It's not necessarily just how we perceive feminism. That's why I would like Cheska to ask the third question that we have for you. We had actually a total of 4, but due to time, we'd have to skip to the third question. Could you ask that for us, Cheska?
Yes, absolutely. So, we talked about the climate and, what the Korean audiences are like. So, Yeon mentioned there's a movie called Smugglers, which is led by a very heavy female cast that has been doing very well. What do you think the Korean audiences like and look for compared to other parts of the world?
I think the focal point is story. I was very privileged to meet Bong Joon-ho many years ago, interviewed him before the success of Snowpiercer, and I asked him about the film and what's so important about audiences in Korea, and he responded, story. They want good story.
So true.
The thing is with Smugglers, I was lucky to go to the press screening, and there was just so much interest in the film. There was a lot of buzz surrounding the title. I went to see it at this big IMAX screen. It was completely full, and it almost felt euphoric because the industry's had a hard time. And the film is different. It's visually really interesting, but it's also a lot of fun. So I think a film needs to be enjoyable, it needs to be entertaining, there needs to be comedy, there needs to be characters that audiences can connect with. And often Korean films, either with social issues, either with history and culture, and the characters in those films, audiences will be able to relate to. And I think that's also true of Hollywood films. And so I think yes, spectacle is important. Having big actors in the movie is important. They need to be more well made. But I think the story, that's crucial in driving those audiences into theatres. And going back to Barbie, I think the story ultimately, yes, it's about feminism, but I think it was a story that they couldn't really connect with. Although I would say it does have some fans in Korea.
Jason, if we had more time, we would love to hear from you a bit more. But due to time, we have to let you go. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to hear from you today, and it was very insightful.
Thank you for having me.
Thank
Jason.
you.
All right, so as a final note, then why do you guys think that the movie didn't hit it off well with the Korean audience? And where do you guys like to see feminism-related movies or movies talking about different societal messages go on from here?
Well, for reasons why I think personally it didn't do very well is, and we've sort of touched on it a little bit, is that Western comedies, specifically comedies with that sort of humor, I don't think do very well in Asian cultures because it requires a lot of knowledge about Western pop culture, which goes back 90s, 80s, 70s. And if you weren't familiar with certain, example, lines within a comedy, it does take a lot of the fun out of it for certain viewers. I remember a time when I was watching Deadpool, and Deadpool makes a lot of pop culture references. And I was the only one laughing at those pop culture references in the theater, which everyone was looking at me like I'm the weird one. But
why is he so loud?
Yeah, why is he so loud? But yes, like Jessica mentioned, there's not a long history when it comes to Barbie here in Korea, so many people might not have been interested. But in regards to feminism, and obviously it's an important topic that we need to talk about, as long as it's done and I think made in the right way.
Made in the right way.
Where it's not the underlying message in some ways.
And as Jason mentioned, because the Korean audience is all for a good story and good cinematic effects, we'll hopefully see that with all of these societal message movies coming on from here now on forth. And we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Cheska Dainha.
Pleasure's always mine. Thank you.
Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you next week. We are
News Generation.